Three people are found dead inside a home. The house is said to be locked from the inside. So ask yourself this: how did anyone get in, and how did anyone get out? And if the first investigation solved it, why did a higher court later throw it out and order a fresh probe? If you like calm, detailed audio-only case stories, subscribe now and turn on notifications. These stories take time to research, and you won't want to miss the next one. This case is from 2008. The place is India, in Tamil Nadu, in the city of Chennai. Inside the house lived an elderly couple. Victim was a retired senior public sector official and academic. Victim's spouse was also a retired government officer. They were known as respected residents in their area. They had no children. They had wealth and property, and public reports say they were worried about relatives and property disputes. Living with them was a teenager, a domestic worker. She had been hired only a few months earlier through an agency. Now listen carefully. This case is not only about a violent incident. It becomes a story about missing answers and a probe that itself falls under suspicion. On the night before the discovery, victim and victim's spouse attended an event at a hotel. Late at night, their driver dropped them back home. According to the driver's statement in public reports, the teenager locked the main door after letting the couple inside. And after that, the night goes quiet. No confirmed alarm, no confirmed calls for help, no confirmed witness seeing anyone enter or leave. Public reports do not clearly mention this. Early the next morning, a friend of victim arrived, as he often did. It was part of a routine, morning walk timing, regular contact, familiar habit. But something felt wrong. The gate and the main entry were not as expected. The friend noticed the house did not look normal. He went in. He moved toward the upper part of the house, and then he saw it. 3 people in the home had lost their life: the elderly couple and the teenage domestic worker. It is hard to even imagine that moment. A familiar home, a familiar routine, and suddenly a scene that does not make sense. The friend called the police. Soon, officers arrived. The area was secured. Special teams were formed. People in the neighborhood watched from a distance, trying to understand how something like this could happen inside a home that looked, from the outside, like any other home. Investigators treated it as a serious case from the start. Public reports mention multiple police teams were assigned. Forensic teams visited the scene. Evidence was collected. This included categories like fingerprints, footprint marks, items from inside the home, and witness statements. Public reports also suggest the home looked searched through, with cupboards opened and documents and valuables possibly missing. At the same time, there were details that did not fit cleanly. Some reports said certain valuables were missing, but other reports said some items on one victim were not taken. So was it only about theft, or was theft just part of the story? Public reports do not clearly mention this. Investigators questioned people around the victim's circle: neighbors, relatives, household staff, and others connected to the victim's daily life. They also looked at what they could from records and trails. But public reporting is not clear on the full phone record picture. Public reports do not clearly mention this. As time passed, pressure increased because the case did not move fast. Nearly a year and more passed without a clear closure. Later, a legal push happened because of slow progress. And after that, the investigation direction became more aggressive. Public reports say investigators focused on a man described as a taxi driver who had been seen around the house earlier. He was questioned. Soon after, that man was found dead in a separate incident, and public reports describe it as a self-harm incident. That changed everything. Because after that, investigators claimed there was a DNA link connecting that man to the scene. Public reports describe a DNA link based on a sample and a close family relative comparison. The conclusion presented was that that man had been present at the scene. Now think about this. A major case turns on a link like that. But even then, many key questions still remained. After this, police arrested multiple people. 2 younger men described as linked to the night, and a couple described as connected through sheltering or disposal of valuables, according to the prosecution version shared in public reports. A trial followed. A lower court convicted the arrested persons and gave life sentences based on what was described as circumstantial evidence. For a while, it looked like the case was solved. But then came the turning point. Years later, a higher court reviewed the case, and the higher court did something shocking. It set aside the convictions and ordered a fresh investigation by a central agency. Now listen carefully. This is the key point. The turning point was not a new witness, not a new confession, not a hidden video. It was the court saying, in effect, the investigation had serious gaps, and some actions by investigators themselves looked improper. The court highlighted major issues, including, first, the question of entry. If the home was secured from the inside, how did the attackers enter, and how did they leave? Public reports say this question was not clearly answered. Second, handling of bank lockers. Public reports say the court raised concerns that the victims' bank lockers were opened without proper procedure and documentation. The court even raised suspicion about possible collusion involving officials and a bank manager, according to public reporting. Third, uninvestigated leads. Public reports mention a name was written on the teenager's palm, and it was not properly followed up. Public reports also mention certain valuable items and important documents were said to be missing, but were not properly reflected in official records. Fourth, credibility concerns. Public reports mention one officer connected to the probe later faced a corruption trap case in another matter. So the twist becomes darker than the original incident, because now the story is not only who did this, it becomes, was the truth damaged during the first investigation? And if so, was that damage accidental or intentional? Public reports do not clearly mention this. After the higher court's order, the case did not end. It changed hands. The state challenged the order, and the matter went further up. Years later, the highest court in the country upheld the order for a central agency to investigate, according to public reports. Then the central agency registered a fresh case years after the original incident. Public reports say the fresh case did not name anyone as an accused at the time it was registered. As of February 2026, public reports describe the case as under investigation. No new arrests are reported in the material you provided. The earlier convicted persons were released after the convictions were set aside. So where does that leave the public? With a case that had a conviction, then lost that conviction. With an investigation that had a theory, then had that theory questioned. With missing pieces that still do not have clear answers. This case has 2 warnings. The first warning is personal and practical. When families have property and there are tensions, even a normal home can become vulnerable. And when staff are hired through agencies, background verification and clear records matter. Public reports do not clearly mention what verification was done here. The second warning is bigger. When an investigation is weak or when procedure is not followed, truth becomes harder to reach. Even strong evidence can feel uncertain if the chain of trust breaks. Think about this. 3 lives were lost in one night, and even years later, the story is still being rewritten by courts and investigators. Now, I want to ask you, do you think the early solution was rushed because of pressure? Or do you think the real truth was buried under mistakes and mishandling? Share your thoughts in the comments, respectfully. This story is shared for awareness and educational purposes based on public reports.